My name is Carruth, and I'm the new Executive Director with American Boer Goat Association. And I'm excited to be back in Texas. This is home for me, which, it makes something that is already special even more special. So it's great to be back here. I've been in Colorado for a few years and in the UK before that. So it's nice to be back in Texas and working around people and family that I've known for a long time. I grew up in the Panhandle in Lubbock on a cattle operation. We had horses as well, and I raised a few club calves. And so livestock and the industry is important to me. We had a few commercial goats through the years, but nothing pedigreed, nothing like that. So the Boer goat industry in and of itself is brand new, but the concept is not.
And you have quite a bit of experience in the livestock universe. Colorado was a big part of that. Tell me about what you did there.
Sure. So after I finished my graduate degree in the UK, I came over and worked with American National Cattlewomen. And they are a big membership organization of female cattle producers across the U.S. They have members in every single state. And it's got two sides to it. There's a C3 foundation and a C6 membership organization. And so I was the ED for them, and we worked on all sorts of different initiatives with the USDA and the checkoff, and then just stuff that they themselves needed to work on. So it was an exciting time. The cattle industry is vibrant. They do a lot of work for both their members and for the public. And so I'm excited to see the Boer goat industry and the goat industry as a whole move more towards that direction.
Obviously, with the stockyards in Denver, it's well known for cattle, which is a pretty impressive thing. But it's sort of a beautiful thing that you are in a city now, San Angelo, that's well known for its small ruminant population and its history. Tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So San Angelo in and of itself has had a long history with small ruminants. And I think that's just, it's where we are. It's a bit marginal land, so you can't run a bunch of cattle out here and do very well with it. Lots of brush, lots of scrub, that sort of thing. Colorado has the same sort of deal, so does California, very dry lands. Goats allow for you to manage this land in a much more sustainable way and still get something off of it. So you have a product at the end that is, it's good for everything and everyone. It's great for the wildlife population. It helps land management. It helps with range management, the whole shebang. So you're not running goats in conflict with any of their natural surroundings. In fact, quite the opposite. So that piece is really exciting to me because I love to see what we can do in agriculture in regard to moving in a much more sustainable direction where we are providing really equitable food sources for everybody. And so it's just an exciting time, I think, in livestock production in America in general. But specifically with small ruminants, they've never been able to take the forefront like they have in so many other nations across the world. So here I am in San Angelo, and we're gonna do it big.
Well, I'm really excited that you mentioned both California and a sustainable concept, because I'm sure a lot of other people think of the Boer goat and they think, oh, okay, meat goat. And I think that's a fantastic thing, but being from California, I think drought and fires. And these goats are phenomenal.
Absolutely. So small ruminants have this amazing capacity to take care of lands that you would normally have to come through and clear yourself. And that may sound, if you're not familiar with range management situation, that may sound anti-intuitive to what would be a natural state or what the land needs, but really quite the opposite. If you end up with areas that are completely covered in shrubbery that are impassable, well, that means wildlife is impassable for them as well. And you're not growing any foodstuffs for your deer or any other animals that share that land. And so small ruminants, they eat above their head, they eat down below, they prefer to eat up most of the time. And so you really are, you're keeping some areas open so that you can have grasses and other flora and fauna flourish in an area which would normally sort of be taken over by some of it quite invasive species that are not native to the areas.
And especially with your cattle experience, you understand that these goats from my understanding anyway, they work really well with cattle. They don't compete, correct?
Absolutely. You can grow cattle and goats very complementary together. They do not compete with each other for foodstuffs, and so you've got cattle that are grazing your grasses, and you've got goats that are running around cleaning up the shrubbery, and they generally like each other. So it's not, as long as you've got the fences to keep everybody in, you can have a happy flock of goats or a herd of goats and a happy herd of cattle, for sure.
And yet we don't see tons and tons of goats, at least Boer goats, here commonly. You do see them in Texas, but they're not as common as you would think if they have all these advantages.
Sure, and I think that's just a lack of education on our part. We need to do a better job telling the story of how goats can complement large ranching systems, how they can grow well with cattle. They are becoming a very, very valuable animal, and so there is a desire to put those in your operation now. We've got $3-4 a pound live weights, and so that changes the game a little bit for a cattleman to want to share his property with a bunch of goats, and it just becomes a more diversified operation, which I think protects you from the slumps and the highs. You should have an evenness in your business. That's really where the sustainability in a business comes from. And so diversified operations are absolutely important. And the beef industry has done many, many things very, very, very well. A couple of things that aren't going very well is how their producers handle the slumps in the markets. And I think goats are a complement to that.
The way you're going to capture that is to take advantage of market opportunities, educate your members, and move it forward. So tell me a little bit about what the ABGA does.
Sure, absolutely. ABGA. ABGA has had a few years of floundering, that is for sure. And so we are trying to put together an entirely new staff. Well, maybe not quite entirely, but almost entirely. And in that process of doing training and really digging deep into the processes that go on in an office, we're discovering many discrepancies that maybe we could do a lot better from a membership standpoint. So we register goats and we provide membership opportunities, and we've not been doing that very well. And so putting systems in place that work, putting people in place that are the right people, and then looking forward down the road, what are our goals with this organization? So that is currently what I'm working on, is to make a very efficient and workable office so that our members are happy to be members and that they're getting the things that they've paid for. And then further to that, it's a much larger piece of visioning as to, the goat industry is quite diverse, and it's all across this beautiful country with both very small producers, hobbyists, you could call them, and then large producers that have big commercial herds. And how do we put all of these people together in an industry that works for everyone? I mean, you could have a goat in your backyard in Chicago, right? You can't have a cow there. So that is a different person than, a fourth generation rancher in New Mexico. And so bringing all of these people together is what this organization is about. It should be educating every single person, no matter if it is a long-term rancher or a newbie. The education component is absolutely key, and I think is something that we've failed on a little bit. But further to that, there's research that needs to be done, must be done, a promotion piece that hasn't been focused on all. We have an end product, right? We're not just shows. We've got an actual product to put out there. And so I'm excited to work on the organization and the office, but there is so much more as well. So I'm the executive director. That's essentially the CEO of an organization. I'm also an ex officio or non-voting member of the board of directors. And so that's where that crossover piece with a nonprofit works. Whereas, I don't get to just say, hey, I want to do A, B, C, D. Deal with it, right? there is a board that I touch back on, and they touch on me as well. And so that is kind of where the oversight piece of the nonprofit exists. And then from there, we've got different program managers. We've got a youth director, so a junior coordinator is what she is called. We have a show manager. They work with our sanctioned shows and our national show and all of that kind of fun stuff. And we've got lots to do in those two arenas. Really, there's so many problems, but in turn, there's so many opportunities. And so those two areas have a lot going for them and just haven't really been supported for quite a few years. And then we've got a PR manager, and she works on communication and the educational component and rebuilding our website and just stuff, again, that hasn't been touched for a long time. So it seems like, I think, from the outside, maybe that we're not doing a whole lot, but there really is so much to do, and you can't do it all at once. But we kind of are, in all honesty. I mean, there are people who are actively working on the back ends of all of these things to clean them up and fix them. But it's a process. So then from there, we have an office manager, and she, deals with the day-to-day of the office, so payroll, HR kind of things. She's our bookkeeper, all of that kind of the nitty-gritty sort of stuff. And then from there, we've got managers with registration and membership, and then all of the clerks and the people that help pull those pedigree papers together. We have a receptionist who works in member services to just keep things flowing for us, and then just the extras here and there that make all of that function. So it's a reasonably large staff for the size of organization that this is. I think we've got about 20 people, and almost everyone is brand new. So there's a process in that as well. But it is happening, and I think we've got really great people on board. And so I just ask for people's grace in this as we stumble a few times, but really we're trying to take giant leaps.
So I think of the universe in terms of accounting because I am a bookkeeper in my heart and soul. So I always think there's that this year's improvement. You get income and expenses, but that's gone after a bit. And then there's the balance sheet items, the assets that you really invest in. We call them capital improvements. And it's the equivalent of maybe on a farm you digging a well. It's not going to be here. It's not going to be an instantaneous thing. But it's something that you're planning on the 10, 20, 50-year mark, and that's why you spend that extra time and money to do infrastructure improvements, and it sounds very much like that's what you're doing at this organization.
For sure, for sure. I have a long-term vision on this deal. If we wanted to just turn it around immediately, there's things that we could do a lot faster. I don't think that it fixes much, though, really. It keeps us exactly where we are. We fix our little problems, we Band-Aid them, right? This is a much larger situation that has needed care for a really long time that it hasn't really received. And so we're kind of going back to basics and fixing things from, running postage on nonprofit rate instead of standard rate to you name it. I mean, it is really every single piece needs to be looked at and has work to be done on it. So we'll get there, and I'm confident of that, and I appreciate the membership for hanging with us for so long. And I know that there's significant frustration, and I know that not all of that is with our current staff. I mean, that is a long-term frustration piece that has existed, and we understand that. Does it wear on everybody somehow? Absolutely, absolutely. We want to do everything right, and it is frustrating for our own selves when we are trying so hard and putting in so many hours, and then you've still got loose pieces that you're like, how did this happen? But that's life. That's an organization. Mistakes happen. It's how you respond to it. So we are working towards a much larger end goal than I think what has been put in place with ABGA in the past, and to just it's a fantastic breed of goat. I don't know that you can get any better. It's a very large goat that's very, very hardy. And so there's a lot to support there, and there's a worthy cause. And I think that's why ABGA has existed and subsisted through some of these really, really hard times with the organization, is because your product's fantastic, right? We've got a great deal going on with the Boer Goat.
Now, the Boer Goat is going through the same evolution over the last 50 years or so. as the other breeds that we've touched on in at least our filming journey. And that is that it started out as one thing, i.e. meat or whatever it happens to be, and yet in order to sell their animals, oftentimes people have gone to the show because that's what they started at. You go to Rhinebeck and it started out as a little sheep show. And the purpose was to sell the animal and to display it to other people. But it doesn't matter if you are in the equine universe or the bovine universe or the small ruminant universe or chickens or dogs or anything else. The show has changed the money end of things. And so I know that everyone else that we've spoken with has had that same problem. All of the other breed organizations are trying to balance the needs of the people that would prefer to show, and that's their main focus. And frankly, that's where a lot of the big money comes in. And the purpose of the animal itself. It's changing breeding, it's changing the way we look at our economics, is changing everything. So tell us a little bit about the challenges with that.
Well, in a perfect world, your market would lead that show situation and you would be showing the ideal market animal, right? That's how that all started way back in the day. It's changed. We look at a very pretty animal now, right? And this is across the board, whether you're talking about Arabian horses or a guinea pig, right? We're after that aesthetic. And that's not all bad, not at all, but I think there does have to be a cognizance over the fact that this animal was originally bred with a purpose. And are we staying true to the purpose now? You know, horses don't quite have the same purpose that they used to have. And so you can see where that has very drastically changed the direction of the way, quarter horses look per se. You are not dealing with a stocky, workman-like horse in most of the show world of quarter horses. But the ones that are still used still kind of look that way. And I think that is where we need to focus. So we have a working group of Boer goats, right? They are in commercial herds. They are mixed with Spanish goats. They are mixed with other goats, other breeds. And that F1 hybrid vigor makes for an amazing end product that is very, very hardy and that is really, really growing and doing great for commercial goat producers and growers. And so I think that piece can exist quite happily with the show piece. If we end up where these goats, and we are ending up there, these goats are so valuable now in the standard marketplace that the ones that aren't doing so well in the show ring still have a market, then these guys have to be functional in the show ring. And so I think it's an education piece where we really focus back on who is this animal? What was this animal originally bred for? And that is the preservation piece of a breed registry and a pedigree. I mean, that's essentially our job, is to preserve that breed. And so I think it will swing back. I think that we're going to see the show side of this kind of swing back towards the market side because the market side is extremely valuable now.
Now, we had a panel discussion yesterday that was really interesting. We actually had about 9 or 10 people there, I believe. They've not only put money into these animals to bring them from foreign parts, New Zealand, and I believe South Africa as well, and to some extent, but mostly New Zealand is what the story that I hear. And it was a very costly thing, so it's sort of ironic that the people that went over there in the first place were paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for these animals. They had to band together to do it. And they use them for commercial purposes, and now it's coming back to that again, but for the show circuit. And yet the direction of this organization is not always something that they would prefer. And part of this is generational. Part of this is purpose. Tell me about how that is both a difficulty and a challenge that you deal with, but there's an opportunity there.
Absolutely. I mean, every challenge is an opportunity, and every opportunity is room for growth and reflection. And I think that sometimes, especially in America, we're chugging along so hardcore that we're not touching back. What what did they do? Why did they do it? I mean, there's a lot of wisdom in years, right? As teenagers, we think we know so much, and then we realize how little we actually do know. And so, I think that sometimes organizationally we act like teenagers a lot, and there isn't that touchback to the real wisdom of generations and just experience. And so we've got a lot of education that needs to take place. A lot of that is looking back at original purpose, original functionality, what were the real tactile benefits of this breed, and are we moving towards that or away from that? And so, the original guys, I think, would mostly say we're moving away from that. Now, can there be different people with different goals in this deal? Yes, absolutely. There absolutely can be. And I think that that's the beauty of where we live, and that's the beauty of what America kind of is. And so I am not that bothered by the fact that we've got different things going on. What I am bothered by is that maybe we've not done things with total integrity, and that we've not been supporting all of the different people and purposes that they have. So my main goal is to support the breed and the organization and make it a comprehensively, like, integrity-filled organization that people can depend on, and that we have supported research and education in a way that people understand that they can come to us as an expert piece and get the things that they need for their own operations, whatever that may be.
So tell me a little bit about the types of things
Absolutely.
that you would include in education.
Sure. So, we'll go back to the very basics. We have breed standards. They've changed through the years. We need to work on that. That needs to be fixed, per se. So we have got a lot of education to do around who is the Boer goat, right? What is the Boer goat? And then from there, how do you take care of it? How do you market it, right? All of the things that are involved in an education process that how do you deal with your own business? I think we miss the mark on that, specifically in agriculture, a lot. These are very, very diversified businesses that aren't, it's not a hair salon. It's not a shop. It's maybe all of that, plus an accounting practice, plus an investment firm, right? You're talking about just extremely difficult business concepts to deal with. And I don't think that agricultural schools push the fact that they need an MBA really to run their farm. So at the end of the day, can we help support some of that? I think so. I mean, I think there's opportunities for both. How do you take care of your animal, and how do you manage your farm in a profitable way?
And I look at it and say there are moments of opportunity with the financial end of things, either tax credits for agricultural production land. I mean, that's money in people's pockets.
Absolutely. And that is where I think many nonprofits could really step up to the plate totally and completely. And specifically an organization like this, it's well funded. It's got very smart people involved in it. And so let's pull and pool those resources and help people understand that, yes, tax credits changed last year. Here's what you can do about it, right? So, yeah.
Okay, so this is a long-term project that you're starting on.
It's a long-term project. And my goal is to support the small farms, the large farms, and everybody in between. And yeah, it's disseminating that information in a concise and simple way so that, you can pick it up and grab it in tidbits and eat it and deal with it and apply it. And so in a nutshell, that's kind of what I would like to see as we move forward, is that we are providing education. It exists out there. I mean, you can go research and pull your own scholarly journals, but that's a challenge, right? So how do we pull the things that the majority of our members are going to benefit from, pull it into a concise and disseminate way, and put it out there to the world and to our members? And so, yeah, ABGA we've got some challenges for sure, but so many opportunities.
But you're trying to fundamentally change the the structure of this organization to capture all of the advantages. And that's not just for membership. This is a long-term project that also might include
Right.
education for, I heard yesterday, the board of directors and the judges and things like that.
Yeah. So absolutely. I mean, we are only as strong as our weakest link. We need to do education across the board, for the board. And that won't just be me. You know, there will be other experts that come in to help support that piece. The judges drive the whole thing, right? And so whatever is fashionable in the show ring is going to be fashionable at the sale barn. And so we've got to do some work around that where we are pushing animals that are highly functional. And the board has the duty of care to the whole organization. You know, their goal is not to represent their constituency. And I know that they are regional directors, but their task is to take care of this organization. Now, does that mean that they can't understand where their people are and what they need? Absolutely, that's totally the point. You know, what's good for California is not good for Maine all the time. And so how do we take those two pieces and make it good for both? And that is where, you know, our regional directors are really essential to how the organization functions, and just to give those pieces of perspective to how we're going to put together umbrella pieces that work for everyone. But yeah, education across the board is absolutely essential. It's essential for me all the time. I go and do and work in nonprofits, work all the time, in the sense that I have trainings with how do we run an organization regularly, because stuff changes and you forget to focus on something. I mean, it just is what it is. And so yeah, we all need to push ourselves to be the best that we can totally be. But beyond that, ABGA is not just itself, right? It's the goat industry as a whole. It may end up being, you know, pieces of the cattle industry. It may be pieces of range wildlife management, right? How do we deal with all of these entities, all of these stakeholders, and move ABGA and our members in a direction that really complements everything around them, right? So that we are creating a very, very equitable food system that we slide in super nicely in a very sustainable way. And I think we're there. I think that there's a ton of grant opportunities for this organization. I think we've just got to kind of clean up our office a little bit, and we'll have those opportunities.
In this day and age, especially with the advances in technology, with the ability to push products, with the ability to market, a company, an organization, any group or individual has to be agile, flexible, and diverse in order to capture all of those things.
Yes, and we have a terribly diverse consumer base. And so that is a focus of mine as well. I'm trying to build a diverse office staff as well, so that there are those pieces that from just a cultural standpoint, I can touch back on. Are we hitting where we need to be hitting? But yeah, trade, oh my goodness, we could go on for hours just about trade and the tremendous opportunity that exists. We can't even fulfill our own domestic consumption piece, and yet we are constantly asked to trade elsewhere and to export. This is a rather large piece of the pie that isn't going to happen this year, right? I mean, this has got to be a longer term planned out situation for this organization in order to thrive like it should be.
So that said, where is it that you would like this organization to be in a year, 5 years, and 10 years in order to capture all of those strengths that we mentioned?
Absolutely. I mean, so within the next year, I would like for us to identify some researchers and have pursued the funding to deal with our own DNA program. We have put it in a voluntary status tied to registration. And so I still encourage people to DNA their herds as much as they can. And if they want to do their does as well, that's even better. But we have put it into a voluntary status because we currently don't DNA for anything, right? And so we just pull DNA, and it doesn't really tell us much except, you know, yes, your baby excludes from that daddy, right? And so beyond that, there's really not anything that's concrete at the moment. So we need to identify quite a few more markers within goats so that we have a database that is usable. And then from there, some of the database that we have is accessible to ABGA. The people that have run their DNA through ABGA, we can pull and we can give that to researchers so that they can then do this work. But a lot of it is not, and that's really discouraging, because if we as an organization had been investing into this DNA research like our membership has, so right, they pay for their animals to be DNA'd, and that's cost our members a lot of money. And if we had kind of thrown in the same equivalent amount of money on top to do the research, we'd probably be in a little bit of a different place at this point with DNA. And so it works in cattle, it works in a lot of other areas. They test for so many more markers than we have even available to us worldwide, much less just on the boar goat breed and species. So we've got work to do in research. We've got work to do in educating our members that, you know, there's a purpose to DNA. It is to define genetics that are great, and to work on disease resistance and these things that are EPDs is what we call them, so expected progeny differences. And we should be working towards building a better goat all the time if we are pulling DNA off of them. And currently that's not how our DNA program works at all. So in a year, I hope that we've identified where we need to go with that specific piece. And then, you know, it's a longer term project to get those markers and to actually have a program that's usable and that's giving us things like ease of kidding and, you know, carcass weights that are just right, and all of the stuff that people think of DNA in the cattle industry per se. So that is a 1 year and kind of a 5 year, to put it there. And then further to that, where is our junior program going, right? I would love to see these kids in DC. I would love to see them in New Zealand and in South Africa and really learning about this breed and how to grow better goats and take care of their places better. I mean, it's fantastic to see how other places in the world do the same thing that you're doing at home, right? And there's always just a little spin on it and a little bit different and a little bit of, you know, that generational wisdom that has come from a different generation and on a different side of the world. And so that piece is absolutely vital. I think pulling a junior program together that is really robust, not only on leadership, you know, principles and style and that, you know, the classic 4-H stuff that everybody knows about, but really beyond that, like how are we going to function in a very global world on this little bitty farm that we have, right? That isn't little bitty. It feeds the world. And so I think if we look at ourselves from a different perspective, that we have this huge consumer base and that we are all businesses, right? We are the Apple, we are the Nike, we have the number one product that's consumed always, and that's food, right? I mean, we grow food. I think we as producers need to look at ourselves differently and operate differently.
And today is a very quickly changing world, and we have drought, and we have problems with maintaining production at the same rates we did with the animals that we have gravitated toward over the last 50, 100, 200 years. So there is such an amazing opportunity with this goat that has strengths in all of those areas. And I listen to you talk about the future and the young people, and I think they might just get this.
I think so. We've got a smart group of people that love what they do, and that passion piece makes up for a lot, right? So yeah, absolutely. We've got a really bright future in this organization. I think a bright future in farming and ranching and livestock production, but we've got to be consumer focused. Our consumers want a certain thing, and I think we can provide it beautifully. So.